Here in the beautiful Amsterdam, we're here with Dan Morehead from Pantera Capital. How are you doing, Dan?
Great, thanks very much.
Yeah, obviously the first question is when are we going to the moon, actually, Dan?
Yeah, so I think the excessive focus on to the moon, and then now everyone's excessively bearish. And if you graph Bitcoin log scale, it's pretty consistent. It's been growing 180% a year, compound annual growth rate for 8 years. You have some booms like in December when it went a bit too high. You have some busts like now where it's a bit below the trend. And I think it'll get right back onto that trend line. And in the end of next year, that would put it at 67,000. I think that's a decent estimate. And I know it sounds crazy now because everyone's so pessimistic and bearish, but I think it will resume its trend.
What are the arguments? I mean, the scarcity of Bitcoin itself, more institutional money coming in.
Yeah, so every year there's been a different credentializing moment. Last year was futures that really helped drive the price. Now I think the big issue, the big news is there's some very important, very institutional grade custodians and exchanges coming online. You have the parent company, the New York Stock Exchange, doing Bakkt. That is very transformative because you're going to have a very well-capitalized company bringing their trading expertise. They own 13 different exchanges around the world to this business that will allow institutional investors to get more involved. Fidelity announced they're going to do a custody solution. They've been very actively working in the space for 4 years. That will bring in another kind of constituent.
Sorry, I heard that Galaxy is their first client, their first custodian client.
Yes, and so you're going to have, institutional investors will want to be in this space, and I think the announcement that Yale's now investing in the cryptocurrency space is really important because there's a lot of people that want to have some kind of leadership in the space and want to see the, some of the most cutting edge entities do things. And it reminds me of back in 2015, no Wall Street firm had any exposure to cryptocurrency in any way. And then Goldman Sachs invested in Circle, and that sparked an explosion of every Wall Street firm scrambling to buy something. All the big credit card companies bought stakes in blockchain companies. All the banks either bought direct stakes or invested in consortia. And I think you're going to see that here, where now that you have cutting-edge endowments investing, that allows the other 2,000 endowments to really take a strong look at the space.
So we can expect like a second wave of institutional money coming in. What is the impact? I mean, the impact will be that Bitcoin price will go up, obviously.
Oh, I think it is that simple, that it's like the gold standard. There's 21 million shares of Bitcoin or units of Bitcoin. And so if 10 years ago there's only a few thousand people using Bitcoin, it had a very low price, and then it was 5 million a few years ago, now it's 50 million, and in a few years' time it's 500 million using Bitcoin. The price has to go up, and it's essentially supply and demand.
I mean, Bakkt is planned for November. I mean, but these cycles go pretty slowly. Have we seen with the ETF? So when do you expect like a new momentum? Probably hard to say, but
it is hard to say, and we actually try not to focus too much on the short-term price fluctuations. We want our investors always thinking out at least a year or 2 or 3, maybe even decades down the road. I would say I think the ETF is still ways off because the SEC has not even explicitly ruled on Bitcoin itself. So having ETFs based on that, it seems like it's very far off. And when we launched the first cryptocurrency fund in the US, we picked it to be in a hedge fund structure for accredited investors. And I think that's the right approach for something so speculative and so early as Bitcoin. So I think the industry focuses too much on the ETF, and I think it's quite a ways in the future.
Even with Van Eck, who was a quite well-known ETF provider, actually. But still,
yeah, they were the previous speaker on the conference, and as an industry participant, I think it'd be great if it happened. It's just I'm not going to hold my breath.
Right. So actually, the Fidelity and the Bakkt thing or the introduction has more effect. I mean, more.
I think so. I think if the ETF happened right today, it'd be great. But if it doesn't happen, which is my central case, I think Bakkt and Fidelity and deals like that are much more likely to have a real impact today.
All right. And if you look at your own fund, we have to take a look at it. I mean, 2018 is not the best year, of course, but still, I mean, it was like 73% losses, I think. I mean, some site reported on it.
Yeah, so the fund was up 500% at one time, locked a lot of those gains in, and now in 2018, it's had poor performance. It's part of the 7 big bull and bear cycles we've seen in crypto, and so for our investors, we want always to be thinking this is a multi-year thing. The typical cycles are about a year because we've had 7 bull and bear cycles in the 9 years that Bitcoin has been trading. So it is a multi-year approach.
But still, I mean, to your clients, it's still justified. Huh? I mean, how do you justify it? I mean, I can expect that clients are asking, okay, maybe we should do some more actively trading or.
Yeah. All of our clients know they're investing in something that's going to take decades to roll out, and sometimes the performance is way better than the industry, and sometimes it's worse. And so we've had most of our clients to completely understand that, and typically have seen inflows.
Okay, so they're very patient. Mm-hmm. All right. A few more questions. I mean, what do you think of the influx of STOs? I spoke in London, I was in London, lots of VCs from America, Canada, and they were all talking about STOs actually, and putting assets on the blockchain like gold and real estate.
Oh, I think it's very important. Tokenization has a lot of big benefits for fungibility and cross-border movement of assets. We are investing in a couple of companies that are providing services to security tokens, but investing in the kind of gold-backed tokens themselves isn't interesting because it doesn't have a very asymmetric risk reward like we're looking for in venture. But I do think that it will be very important in the industry to have asset-backed tokens trading to allow access to assets that have been hard to get a hold of.
Fractionate real estate, etc., gold.
Yeah, those are interesting. I would say things like art are even more interesting because in the real estate market, we already have REITs and we already have, gold ETFs and things like that, where there is really no way for a normal investor to get a chunk of a Picasso or to get a portfolio of lots of different artists. And so I think tokenization is even more important for assets like art that are not yet well distributed in some kind of fractionalized ownership structure.
2 questions. I mean, this week started, of course, with the upswing in Bitcoin. How do you look on this Tether, Bitfinex relationship, and even, I mean, Tether, the position of Tether itself?
Yeah, I don't have any deep insights on Tether, so nothing interesting to add.
All right. Well, actually, you said in your presentation that you guys invested in Basis. It is a stablecoin.
Yeah. So stablecoins are very important. We've invested in Fragments, Basis, a few other stablecoin projects. But our view is it's going to take 3 or 4 years to really test them, to work through some very extreme scenarios. And it's kind of like currency pegs in the fiat currency world. They sound great until there's a crisis, and then most of them blow up. So it's going to take a while until there's a proven stablecoin.
Right. Last question: what are your favorite altcoins? Actually, I mean. Or are you a Bitcoin maximalist?
Oh, certainly not a Bitcoin maximalist. And I would think it's kind of like in the early 90s being a Yahoo maximalist, right? It was a great company, but there were 30 other really important companies. And Bitcoin's amazing. It's going to be very powerful over the next decades. But there are also other projects. We're investors in Ripple. Ethereum is obviously incredible. Zcash. Augur is now live and proves that you can actually build a decentralized prediction market. Those are
the expect of Augur. I mean, Augur it's like it's the new kid on the. I mean, it's not a new kid on the block, but it's one of the hottest kids on the block.
Yeah, it's a great project for a lot of reasons. It shows what you can do with decentralization. It also shows how long it takes. Its ICO was 4 years ago. it takes 4 years to build, to get it out there, and now it works. There's some building blocks that are in place now that'll make new projects a bit quicker, maybe 2 or 3 years, but I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. The ICOs that came out 6 months ago, it's going to be a couple of years until they're actually live. And then Augur does show as well, the industry needs to solve the scalability issues before it's very useful. So, all these things are steps, and that's one big step, but we still have some more to go.
So it's still like if in analog with the digital of internet era. I mean, we're still in 94, 95. What do you think? I mean,
I think so. I think we're in the really early days of this, and it's kind of like in the early 90s saying that, TCP/IP sucked because you couldn't stream Netflix to your iPhone on a beach in Bali yet. It took a long time for all those things to happen, and I think that's the perspective people should have here, is these protocols are really, really important, but even, the best protocols take years to actually roll out, and then it's going to take years for scalability, and then even more years to get the community understanding it and using it. So it's very important technology, but it's going to take, decades, like the internet did.
Yeah, without the Netscape, we wouldn't have Google or all the others.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morehead, and all the best.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks.